Hey y'all, I'm Tracy and welcome to Just Dig It Farms. Today I want to share with y'all my top 4 things that I like to get done in the garden in the fall. We live in central Alabama and our growing zone is 8, so we have a really long growing season here. And gardening is my passion, y'all, so I pretty much garden all year long. Even when it's December or January and it's too cold to be out here in the garden working, I'm still thinking about the garden. I'm thumbing through seed catalogs and making my seed selections and orders for the year. I'm making my garden plans, my crop rotation plans, my companion planting plans, my garden layout for the year. I'm starting some seeds in January. I'm always reading, researching, and studying all I can about gardening. Gardening is a lifestyle for me, y'all, and it is my passion. And then in January and February, I'm really going strong on my seed starting. And then when spring comes, it is go time. It is prepping beds, adding compost, adding mulch, planting, all that we can possibly plant. And then summer is just pretty much about trying to keep everything alive here in our hot, humid, and usually very dry summers. And we're busy in the summer harvesting and preserving. And then we move into fall. Every season is garden season to me, but fall is a great time to be out in the garden. It's so much cooler outside to garden here in the South in the fall. The humidity's not bad at all. It's cool, crisp, clean air, not near as much pest pressure and diseases to battle with. It's a perfect time to plant your trees and shrubs and roses and fruit trees and shrubs, and to plant all of the cool season vegetables. And the cool season vegetables are really our favorite. We enjoy them more than we do the summer vegetables. Fall is just a wonderful time to be in the garden. I have 4 main things that I'm focusing on when I'm gardening in the fall. The first one is I like to clean up everything from the spring and summer garden. Everything that is finished from the spring and summer garden all gets pulled out. All of the weeds gets pulled out of the bed, and the beds get all cleaned up in the potager garden. I also like to prune my roses and clean them up a little bit. You can see my Rosa multiflora here. I gave it a pretty good pruning and retrained it. It was going wild this past summer. I think it's going to produce a beautiful show come spring. I like to trim up all of my perennials. This catmint here was just going wild everywhere and a lot of dead and finished, so I pruned it all back and cleaned it all up. I did my phlox that way. It had a lot of spent flowers on it and was just finished, so I pruned it down and cleaned it up. I like to do pretty much all of my perennials that way. Now this is my cottage gardens around my house, and I haven't got to them yet. I just finished up the potager garden and I'm starting on these this week, but you can see what they look like before I get in and clean them up. That is Artemisia there, and it's eating up my roses. It needs to be pruned and cleaned back. My chrysanthemums were beautiful. Now they're finishing up. It's time to prune back my limelight hydrangeas. So I like to just come in, remove any dead. You can see my boxwoods has some problems going on with them there. I think my arborvitaes died from the drought this year, so I'm gonna have to pull those out and replace those. We lost a lot in the drought this year. I had some health issues and I wasn't able to get out here and take care of everything like I normally would have, and we lost a good bit. So that's one of the things that we're doing this fall, is we're replacing the shrubs and the trees that died. The second thing that I like to do in the fall is sow my cover crops. I love to sow cover crops in any of these potager beds that I am not planting any kind of cool season vegetables. I sow cover crops in them because the cover crop makes a cover over the soil and keeps the soil from being bare. You never want to just leave your soil bare. It always needs a covering over it. So I like to sow my cover crop seed wherever there's going to be bare soil for the winter, because not only is that putting a good cover over my soil, it's building nutrients up in my soil. It's adding all kinds of nutrients and minerals to my soil that's really going to help me have a successful garden season next spring. So we've sown a lot of the potager beds here in cover crop, and I'm starting a new garden area right out there. That's going to be our market garden and orchard area. So we sowed cover crop seed all out in there to help start building that soil. Just like the cover crop seed as a covering over your soil, I also like to add a good layer of mulch over my beds, in all of my beds. So we use whatever we got, whatever we can get our hands on. I like to use leaves. Leaves is a great way to mulch your gardens because those break down so good and make such good soil. I use old hay, I use old wheat straw, I use pine straw in some of the areas, mostly because it is a free source for us. A couple of years after we moved here, Gene planted a whole section of our property in pine trees by hand. He did every one of them by hand. I don't know how many hundred pine trees he planted, and he did it by hand. So now we have a beautiful pine forest and free pine straw, which I love because pine straw is super expensive. So we go over and rake up our own pine straw, and we use it as a covering over our soil in all of the cottage garden beds and in some of the beds here in the potager garden, like around my arborvitaes over there, around the blueberries, because they love acidic soil, and pine straw will make your soil acidic eventually over time as it breaks down. I also added some pine straw to my herb border here. I usually don't do that. I usually just use the hay or grass clippings or leaves, but I decided just to use a little pine straw over there and freshen that up. The point is you never want to leave your soil bare and exposed to the elements. You always want to keep a good covering on your bed, whether it be the plants that you're growing in it, or it's straw, or leaves, or grass clippings, or hay, or pine bark, or whatever. You always want to make sure your soil is covered. That helps keep weeds from taking over. It helps to hold moisture into the soil, and it helps to keep your soil healthy and alive. Number 3, fall is the best time to plant cool season vegetables here in the South. So we can grow broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbages, carrots, kale, Swiss chard, lettuces, all of those, beets, radishes, all of those wonderful cool season vegetables that we cannot grow in the summertime here. We can grow them here in Central Alabama, Zone 8, in early spring and in fall up into the winter. When it was time to start sowing the seeds for the cool season vegetables, I was not able to get out here and do that. So I didn't get to plant a full garden of cool season vegetables, which stinks, but I just couldn't get out here and do it. So I went and bought some starts from a co-op, but you know how expensive it is to buy these starts for these vegetables. They're like $3-4 for one, or $3 or $4 for a little cell pack of 4. And I plant a lot. That's one of the reasons why I love to start my own seeds in my greenhouse here, because I plant a lot, and financially it's just not feasible to go and buy all of those starts. But I did buy just a few starts just so I could grow some broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage in my garden here and just have some fresh vegetables from the garden. I also planted some carrots and kale and chard and collards and beets in my raised beds over here, and they're all doing really well. Fall is also a great time to get your garlic planted. You want to plant it now because it takes about 7 or 8 months from the time you plant it until you harvest it. So we're planting it in October and November here in Zone 8, and we're harvesting it around May. So if you miss planting your garlic here in the fall, then we're not going to have garlic next year. Same for the onions. It's almost time to start planting our onions. And it's time to plant strawberries so that we can have a harvest of berries in the spring. Number 4 is we like to plant trees and shrubs and fruit trees and roses and some perennials in the fall. Fall is the best time to plant those because those plants are going dormant, and all of the energy will be going into developing the roots of that plant instead of the energy going into developing the vegetation or the flowers or the fruit. So all of the energy can focus in on establishing a good, healthy tree or shrub or plant or fruit tree. Also, by planting in the fall, you don't have to water near as much as you do when you plant in the spring and into the summer. We've pretty much got the potager garden all cleaned up, beds are all cleaned up and covered, and now I'm moving on to the cottage gardens all around the house. So we've got a lot of cleanup there, got to cover the beds there and replace a good many of the plants that died. Also on my list for this fall is to get the fruit orchard planted. Still have not finalized my design on this fruit orchard yet and market garden, exactly how I want to lay it out. I pretty much have it in my mind, but I haven't like mapped it out yet and figured out exactly how many fruit trees that I can have in my space there. But that is also next on my list, is to go to Petals and pick up all of my fruit trees and get those planted and in the ground this fall. It's almost time to plant my onions. I've still got to plant strawberries. I've got some roses to get in the ground. Once I get all of that cleaned up, I've got a couple of flats of pansies to plant. Still got a lot of planting to do, still got cleanup to do. We are already into the month of November, but we are making great progress on my 4 main objectives for my fall gardening. Number 1, getting everything cleaned up, getting all of the dead pulled out, all of the spent cut and trimmed back, things that need to be pruned, just getting everything cleaned up. And that even means like cleaning up the greenhouse, cleaning up the garden shed, just trying to get everything cleaned up and organized so that when spring rolls around, everything is ready to garden when it's go time. Number 2 is getting all of the beds and all of the soil covered up, either with cover crop or with some type of mulch. Number 3, planting cool season vegetables and fruits and crops. Number 4, planting trees and shrubs and roses and fruit trees and replacing any of the plants that died this summer in the drought. I hope this video has inspired some of you to get out and do some fall gardening. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Happy gardening. God bless you, and I will see y'all on the next video.